In a bustling metropolis brimming with ambition and glittering skyscrapers, where power and wealth mask the hidden struggles of its people, two individuals from vastly different worlds find their fates unexpectedly intertwined. Lila Bennett, a driven and compassionate marketing executive, has spent her career breaking barriers in a highly competitive industry. Her determination and creativity have made her a rising star at Graham Enterprises, a leading global corporation. Despite her professional achievements, Leela carries the scars of a difficult past, a truth she hides behind her radiant smile. On the other hand, Noah Graham, the cold and calculating CEO of the company, is a man defined by logic, ambition, and a heart hardened by betrayal. Having grown up in a world of privilege, where emotions are seen as weaknesses, Noah has buried his vulnerabilities deep beneath a facade of control. As their lives intersect, the contrast between Leela's warmth and Noah's icy exterior sets the stage for a story of passion, redemption, and the battle between love and fear. Their journey will challenge their deepest beliefs and force them to confront the emotions they've both kept hidden for far too long. Behind Lila Bennett's confident demeanor lies a past that would have shattered a lesser soul. Born and raised in a small, struggling town, Lila's childhood was anything but idyllic. Her father, once a hopeful dreamer, succumbed to alcoholism after a string of failed business ventures. His frustrations and regrets turned into violent outbursts, leaving Lila and her mother as his constant targets. Endless nights of broken bottles and shouted threats became the backdrop of her formative years. Despite the chaos, Lila found solace in her books, immersing herself in stories of resilience and triumph. They became her escape, a glimmer of hope that one day she could carve out a life far removed from the pain of her past. When her mother passed away during Lila's teenage years, the weight of survival fell squarely on her shoulders. Yet instead of succumbing to despair, she channeled her grief into determination. Lila worked tirelessly to put herself through college, juggling multiple part-time jobs while excelling academically. Her tenacity and brilliance didn't go unnoticed, and she eventually earned a position at Graham Enterprises, where her marketing expertise quickly gained recognition. But Leela's achievements didn't define her as much as her compassion did. Having lived through hardship, she never forgot the struggles of those less fortunate. She dedicated her weekends to volunteering at local shelters, mentoring underprivileged children, and spearheading charity events. For Leela, kindness wasn't just an act. It was a way of life, a way to heal her own wounds by helping others. Her colleagues admired her not only for her professional acumen, but also for the warmth she exuded. To them, Lila was a beacon of hope and inspiration. Yet, few realized the depth of the pain she carried, or the strength it took to rise above it all. Leela's resilience was her greatest asset, but it also came with walls she had built around her heart. Trust didn't come easily to her, and she was determined never to rely on anyone else for her happiness or survival. It was this fierce independence that caught the attention of one man, Noah Graham, the enigmatic CEO whose cold exterior hid battles of his own. Noah Graham was a man shaped by a world of privilege, where power and wealth were abundant, but love was scarce. Born into one of the city's most influential families, Noah's life had been meticulously planned from the moment he took his first breath. Private schools, elite mentorships, and a guaranteed position at the helm of Graham Enterprises were his inheritance. Yet, beneath the glitz and perfection, Noah lived a life void of emotional connection. His belief in love was shattered years ago by someone he had once trusted implicitly, Sophia Gray, a woman whose charm and ambition had once captivated his heart. Noah had envisioned a future with her, only to discover that her love came with a price she wasn't willing to pay. When Sophia betrayed him for a lucrative opportunity, Noah's heart hardened, and he swore never to let anyone get close enough to hurt him again. From that moment, Noah buried himself in his work, building Graham Enterprises into a global powerhouse. His cold, calculating demeanor became his armor, a facade of strength that kept emotions and people at a safe distance. To his employees, he was a man to be feared and respected, but never approached. His decisions were always precise, his goals relentlessly ambitious. But behind the carefully constructed walls was a man who struggled with loneliness. Nights spent in his lavish penthouse were eerily silent, and the weight of his responsibilities often left him staring at the city lights, searching for something he couldn't name. When Lila Bennett joined Graham Enterprises, she was unlike anyone Noah had ever met. Her kindness, determination, and quiet strength fascinated him. She challenged his views on life without even trying, and for the first time in years, Noah felt his walls begin to crack. The celebration party at the luxurious hotel was a vibrant affair, with laughter echoing through the grand ballroom and soft music weaving through the air. Lila Bennett, dressed in a refined emerald green dress, made her customary brief appearance. She wasn't one for extravagant events and intended to quietly slip back to the office after retrieving some forgotten documents. Across the room, Noah Graham sat at the bar, his glass of whiskey nearly empty. From afar, he looked like the picture of composure, the powerful, untouchable CEO. But up close, the fatigue in his eyes and the tension in his posture told a different story. He was a man weighed down by the burdens of his past and the pressures of his present. When Lila walked back through the ballroom, she couldn't help but notice Noah sitting there, alone, his expression distant. Against her better judgment, she hesitated before approaching him. "Mr. Graham, are you all right?" she asked softly. Noah glanced up, his normally sharp gaze clouded. "Leela, still working hard, I see," he murmured, a faint, bitter smile tugging at his lips. She pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "You don't look okay. Is there something you want to talk about?" Perhaps it was the alcohol, or perhaps it was her genuine concern that disarmed him, but Noah found himself speaking in a way he never had before. He told her about the betrayal that had hardened his heart, the loneliness that gnawed at him despite his success, and the fear that he could never trust anyone again. Lila listened quietly, her heart softening as she glimpsed the vulnerable side of the man she thought she knew. "You're not as terrible as you think you are," she said gently, her voice laced with sincerity. Noah chuckled darkly, his eyes meeting hers. "You're too naive, Lila. You don't understand how cruel this world can be." Before she could respond, Noah reached out, his hand brushing against hers. His touch sent a jolt through her, and when he leaned closer, she froze, her heart racing. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice low and raw with emotion. Leela tried to steady herself. "Noah, you're drunk," she murmured, but her protest was weak. In an instant, his lips captured hers, tender yet urgent, breaking through every defense she had carefully built. The world around them blurred, and before she fully understood what was happening, they were in his hotel suite, lost in a whirlwind of emotions and unspoken desires. The next morning, as sunlight poured into the room, Lila woke with a start. Wrapped in a sheet, the events of the night before came rushing back. Regret and confusion swirled in her chest as she quietly slipped out of the room, leaving Noah asleep. What had started as a moment of vulnerability had now complicated their lives in ways neither of them could foresee. For days after the night they spent together, both Noah and Lila struggled with the weight of what had happened. Lila avoided Noah at work, keeping their interactions strictly professional, while Noah found himself unable to stop thinking about her. The way she had comforted him, the way she made him feel alive again. But just as their fragile connection began to take root, Sophia Gray, Noah's ex-girlfriend, stormed back into his life. Sophia had once been the love of Noah's life, but her betrayal had left him emotionally scarred. Now, after losing the fame and wealth she had abandoned him for, she wanted him back, not out of love, but out of a desire to reclaim the power she believed she deserved. Sophia wasted no time crafting a plan to destroy Lila. Under the guise of a potential business collaboration, she re-entered Noah's world, attending meetings and finding excuses to be at Graham Enterprises. Though Noah remained distant and cold, Sophia's presence made Lila increasingly uneasy. Sophia soon escalated her tactics. Using her connections in the media, she orchestrated a smear campaign against Lila. Tabloids were flooded with headlines like, "Lila Bennett, the CEO's new mistress?" From humble beginnings to corporate gold digger. The office quickly became a hostile environment for Lila. Once friendly colleagues began whispering behind her back, their admiration replaced by suspicion. The gossip and judgment became unbearable, and Lila, unwilling to let her reputation continue to suffer, decided to resign. One morning, she placed her resignation letter on Noah's desk. "I can't stay here, Noah," she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "I can't keep being the subject of this circus." Noah's jaw tightened as he held the letter. "Are you running away?" he asked, his voice cold but laced with tension. Lila took a deep breath. "I'm not running away. I'm protecting myself." Lila's departure from Graham Enterprises left a gaping void in Noah's life. The day she walked out of his office, resignation letter in hand, he felt a sharp pang of regret he couldn't ignore. He had never begged anyone to stay, but as the door closed behind her, he realized he had let something precious slip away. For days, Noah tried to bury himself in work, but the silence in the office was deafening without her presence. The desk she once occupied now stood empty, a painful reminder of the woman who had brought light into his world. The regret festered, and for the first time in years, Noah admitted to himself that he had made a mistake, one he wasn't sure he could fix. When his assistant informed him of Lila's return to her hometown, a small, quiet place miles away from the city, Noah made a decision. He couldn't let her go without a fight. Late that night, he left everything behind, his work, his pride, his carefully constructed walls, and drove through the dark, winding roads to find her. When he arrived, the town was eerily quiet. Following the address he had obtained, he found himself outside a modest house at the end of a lonely street. Through the window, he saw a faint light flickering, but before he could knock, the sound of shouting erupted from inside. "Where have you been? You think you can just walk away from me?" a man's slurred voice bellowed. Noah's blood ran cold as he heard Lila's muffled sobs. Without hesitation, he pushed the door open and stormed inside. The scene before him was a nightmare. Lila was on the floor, her arms bruised and her eyes filled with tears. A middle-aged man, clearly drunk, loomed over her, a broken bottle in his hand. "Who the hell are you?" the man spat, glaring at Noah. Noah's jaw tightened, his hands balling into fists as he stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp like a blade. "You've hurt her enough." The man lunged at him, bottle raised, but Noah caught his wrist mid-air, his strength fueled by fury. His glare was unyielding, his voice low and commanding. "If you ever come near her again, you'll regret it." Ignoring the man's slurred curses, Noah knelt beside Lila, his anger melting into concern as he gently cupped her face. "You don't have to endure this anymore," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm here now." Tears streamed down Lila's face as she clung to him, too weak to argue. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. As they drove away from the house, Noah's mind raced. He had spent years burying his emotions, building walls to protect himself. But seeing Lila broken and hurt had shattered every barrier he had constructed. Leela stared out the window, her voice barely audible. "Why did you come here, Noah?" He reached for her hand, his grip firm yet comforting. "Because I couldn't let you go. Not again." As her words faded into silence, Noah made a silent vow to himself. No matter how long it took, he would prove to Lila that he could be the man she deserved. This wasn't just about love. It was about redemption. "I can't go back to the way things were," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't want to get hurt again." Noah nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I'll change, Lila, I swear. I'll prove to you that I'll never let anyone or myself hurt you again. Just give me time." Her silence filled the car as they continued down the road, leaving behind the shadows of her past. For the first time, Lila began to wonder if there could truly be a future with Noah. After returning to the city, Lila decided not to go back to Graham Enterprises. Instead, she took a job at a small marketing firm, determined to rebuild her life on her own terms. She kept her distance from Noah, but he remained a constant presence. He visited her workplace, attended her charity events, and quietly supported her from afar. Though she tried to keep him at arm's length, she couldn't ignore the sincerity in his actions. Meanwhile, Graham Enterprises was teetering on the edge of collapse. Sophia Gray had escalated her efforts to undermine Noah, spreading rumors to the media and influencing key investors to pull their support. Stock prices plummeted, projects were delayed, and the company's reputation was in shambles. Noah worked tirelessly to salvage what he could, but the weight of the situation was overwhelming. Late one evening, during yet another tense boardroom meeting, the doors opened unexpectedly, and Lila walked in. The room fell silent as she approached the table, a folder clutched tightly in her hands. "I have an idea," she said, her voice steady. Noah's eyes widened in surprise, but there was a flicker of hope in his gaze. Leela outlined a bold recovery plan, focusing on restoring the company's public image and rebuilding trust with stakeholders through transparency and community engagement. She proposed leveraging Graham Enterprises' resources to support local initiatives, showing the public that the company was more than just profits and power. The plan was ambitious, but it needed funding, something the company desperately lacked. Lila knew of one person who could help: Bernard Hayes, a prominent investor she had once helped during a crisis. Trusting in his gratitude and her belief in Graham Enterprises' potential, Lila reached out to him. To her relief, Bernard agreed to invest, not just because of Noah, but because of Lila's unwavering conviction. "You believe in this company," he said, "and that's enough for me." With Bernard's support, Noah and Lila implemented the plan. Slowly but surely, Graham Enterprises began to recover. The public's perception shifted and trust was rebuilt. Though Lila remained guarded, her actions spoke volumes. She still believed in Noah, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. As the days passed, Graham Enterprises regained its footing. With Bernard Hayes' investment and Lila's bold strategies, the company not only recovered but began to thrive. Projects resumed, stakeholders returned, and the once damaged reputation of the corporation was restored. Through it all, Noah's admiration for Lila deepened. Her determination and strength had not only saved the company, but had also shown him what it meant to truly care for someone without expecting anything in return. One evening, at a charity gala organized by Lila, Noah stood before the crowd. His usually confident demeanor wavered as he held the microphone, his gaze fixed on her. "This company stands today because of one person's unwavering belief in its potential," he began, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "Lila Bennett reminded me of what truly matters, not profits or power, but purpose. She reminded me how to care, how to feel, and for that I owe her more than I can ever repay." Applause echoed through the room, but Noah barely heard it. He turned to Lila, his heart pounding. Taking her hand, he knelt before her. "Lila," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've stood by me through my darkest moments. I don't want to waste another second. Will you be by my side forever? Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Lila's face as the room fell silent, all eyes on her. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she said, "Yes, Noah, yes, I will." The room erupted into cheers as he pulled her into an embrace, his heart finally at peace. The crowd erupted in cheers as Noah pulled her into a warm embrace. Their wedding was a simple yet beautiful affair, surrounded by close friends and family. Shortly after, Lila shared the joyous news of her pregnancy, and together they prepared for the arrival of their son. Noah, once a cold and distant man, became a devoted husband and father, while Leela continued to inspire those around her with her kindness and resilience. Together, they built a life filled with love, understanding, and a future that neither of them had ever dared to dream of.